In this lesson, we'll continue our review of Reading Test 8, Section 1. We're still on the first passage, and this is a narrator, a writer who recalls his childhood in early 20th century Barcelona. It was the literary passage. It's about this boy he loved to read. At the end, he was given Great Expectations by Dickens, and he read it over and over again. He was convinced he wanted to become a writer. And so we're on question number 7. The narrator indicates that he pays Semper, and Semper is the owner of the bookstore, so we're looking for some evidence of the boy paying Semper. All right, so we know Semper wasn't even introduced until later on. My favorite place was Semper and Sons. It smelled of old paper. The bookseller, Semper, would let me sit on a chair and read any book I liked to my heart's content. He hardly ever allowed me to pay for the books he placed in my hands, but when he wasn't looking, I'd leave the coins I'd managed to collect on the counter before I left. It was only small change. If I had to buy a book with that pittance, I would probably have been able to afford only a booklet of cigarette paper. So here's the evidence. He paid him a very small amount. And so, again, you might have recalled this from reading it, but there's always going to be evidence for every question. And so number 7, he pays Semper less than Semper expects him to pay for the books. Well, it's not less than Semper expects. Nothing. No, because he does pay him a small pittance. The money he makes selling sweets to other children, there's no evidence of that. Much less for the books than they are worth, right? If he had to buy something, it would be like cigarette paper because it's much less than the books are worth. So the answer is D. Question 8, what does wait mean in line 44? This is just a vocab in context, a word in context. Try to predict it before looking at the choices. So in line 44, trying to predict what wait means. And so this is at the end. I just read this about how he only could afford a booklet of cigarette papers. When it was time for me to leave, I would do so dragging my feet, a weight on my soul. If it had been up to me, I would have stayed there forever. So wait here, he's dragging his feet. He doesn't want to leave. It's really kind of like this heavy sort of weight. It's not a literal weight, but it's really kind of like holding him back. And so let's see if we can find the answer here. Is it bulk, burden, force, or cloud? It's a burden. It's really this heavy burden. He didn't want to leave. And the answer is B. All right, and then we've got 2 more questions. Question 9. The word friend is used twice in 57 and 58. This is another function question. What is the purpose the narrator uses friend? So let's take a look at 57 and 58. Try to always predict these. Just makes it a little bit easier so you're not biased by the answer choices. So 57 to 58. This is when Semper gave him Great Expectations. I read the cover. I was aware that Semper knew a few authors who frequently his establishment, and judging by the care with which he handled the volume, I thought perhaps this Mr. Dickens was one of them. A friend of yours. So this is the narrator asking. And now Semper saying a lifelong friend. From now on, he's your friend too. All right, so he showed him the book. He said, a friend of yours. And then Semper said a lifelong friend. Now he's your friend when he handed him the book. So this is not a literal, like he doesn't know the friend. He's just using friend as a metaphor for the book. And so let's see for question 9, why does he use friend here? Let's see, underline the importance of narrator's connection to Semper. So the importance of his connection, there's not enough evidence for this. We want to be careful here. Stress how friendships help the narrator deal with difficult times. There's no evidence of that at all. Emphasize the emotional connection Semper feels to the reading, right? He calls him a friend, and we know it's a metaphor, but the word friend, it shows like a strong emotional connection. This looks good. It's better than A, right? The importance of his connection. We don't have evidence of an importance. A friend is better stated as an emotional connection. Imply that the narrator's sentiments caused him to make it irrational. This is way off. So the answer here is C. And then the final question, which statement best characterizes the relationship between Semper and Dickens? So this kind of touches upon the last one, right? So this is Semper and Dickens. And so let's see for the choices here. All right. Again, we can go back and read this, but once you do these specific questions, I think you have a much better idea of what it's about. So here is when we see Great Expectations again, and this is when Semper is giving it to the boy, and he thought that Dickens was one of them. The boy said, but Semper was saying he's a lifelong friend. He's your friend too. And so we read this again. This really shows this kind of an emotional attachment that Semper has to Dickens. But then this question, we want the relationship between Semper and Dickens. Semper models his writing after Dickens' style. So we don't really have any evidence of that modeling his writing, right? Semper's an avid admirer, right? If he's a friend, he's had attachment. This looks good, right? He's giving this prize work to the boy. Semper feels a personal connection to the details of his biography. Again, no evidence. He considers himself to be Dickens' most appreciative reader. You always want to stay away from extreme choices. And obviously, he's appreciative, but the most, I mean, there's no evidence that this is really a superlative, and just want to avoid those extreme choices. He's just an avid admirer of Dickens' work, and so the answer is B.